Welcome to Reddit After Hours. This is r/am I the butthole, where OP's mom knows that she's being abused and tries to brush it all under the rug. Our first Reddit post comes from Klutzy Dingo 5579, titled, "Am I the butthole for telling my mother that I don't consider her as my mother anymore?" And just as a forewarning, this first story deals with essay, so if that's tough for you to listen to, you may want to skip to the next story. So I, a 16-year-old female, refused to trust my mother anymore because of this. When I was 10 years old, she and my dad had separated. They never got married to begin with, and she married a man from Canada. The guy wasn't a bad guy at first. He came home once with sweets and gifts for me and my older siblings and often encouraged me to stay up late to watch movies, which was fine because it was the holidays. But then school started again. I had just gotten into trouble for watching something inappropriate with my friends at school, and when my mom found out, she flipped out. My brothers, who were 26 and 28 at the time, didn't want to stay inside for it, and my sister, who was 32, went upstairs to talk to her boyfriend. When my mom was cussing me out, my stepfather was there listening to the whole thing. He told her to calm down and that he'll talk to me in the morning. I thought he was my savior at the time. The next morning, I woke up to a strange feeling. I felt someone's hands in my underwear. I turned around quickly, seeing that it was my stepfather. I was scared. I threw a pillow on him and I went downstairs, scared and confused. I saw my mom in the kitchen and I was tempted to tell her, but she started scolding me from last night. I couldn't tell her. I was afraid that I was going to get in trouble for that too. When she was done, I barely heard a word of what she even said. I was still so confused about what I woke up to. He came downstairs, smiling and acting like nothing had happened. I kept thinking to myself, maybe it was a mistake, but it wasn't. On my way to school, he turned his phone to me, saying that he wanted to show me something. It was a adult video. I looked up at him, scared and disgusted, and it kept happening from there. Waking up to him in my bed, touching me. In the car, he would try to coax me into touching him. And then, as he prolonged this, his demands kept getting worse. I won't go into details, but it ended up getting really bad. On my 12th birthday, my big sister pulled me aside, saying that she found a little note. I wrote it the very first day that he touched me. On the note, it basically said that I was scared of my abuser stepfather. She wanted to know the details, but I was scared. I was trembling, wondering if it was for the best. My sister called me and my other siblings inside and then called my mom. When she came, I saw my stepfather following her. That's when I froze. I didn't know what to tell her. I panicked, telling them to just leave it alone that night and I'll explain in the morning. I saw the doubt in my mother's eyes the minute I said that. I went to bed with my sister, and I woke up the next morning with my stepfather nowhere to be seen. I thought it was over. Maybe she kicked him out. But when I sat down, my siblings stared at me accusingly, and my mother started scolding me. She told me that lying of such things was terrible, and that there are others out there really going through this, and that it wasn't a joke. I was shocked. They didn't believe me. They thought I was lying. After all that they said that they would do to listen, I started crying, begging them to listen to me, but they didn't. My sister ignored me and went to work. My brother left the house saying that they were going to play cricket. And my mother, she sent me to school. My stepfather driving me to school. He didn't say anything, just drove me while I stared blankly at my school clothes. A few months later, he started touching me again, and I didn't let my family know this time. I just let it happen, because why would they believe me anyway? His demands were far worse than before, and at one point, he almost went all the way with me. If I didn't bite him, he probably would have. He often lent me his phone to play a game, so I used his phone one day, recording him doing all of his usual stuff to me, and I sent it to my private email. I kept it, waiting for the chance to use it, and then the day finally came. It was New Year's Eve, and I was now 14. I went to New York with my aunt to spend the night. I heard my mother yelling on the phone, saying that my stepfather had left the house, leaving them in debt from other people. He tore my entire family apart. My sister was disowned because he lied to my mother. My brothers argued day and night because he drove them apart, and I was still being essayed by him. When I heard my mother yelling, I thought maybe I should send her the little proof that I had of him doing these things to me. I sent it, removing all signs that made it seem like it was from me. I knew the moment when my mother saw the video, and I wasn't surprised that she didn't do anything. She went outside with my aunt, talking to her. Later, my aunt took me for a little drive, asking me if I had sent the video. I broke down, crying and explaining that, yeah, I did. I told her everything. My aunt comforted me, saying that they'll take care of it and to not worry. She instructed me to go home and try not to show any signs that I sent the video to my mom. She explained that it would be better to talk about it when my uncle comes home, which would probably be the next day. I agreed, and when I went home, I plastered on a fake smile and continued to try to act normal. Later that night, my mom asked me privately if I sent the video. I told her yes, expecting her to try and understand what happened. When or why I thought that, I don't know. But she didn't ask any of those things. She just got upset. Yes, she got upset with me. She yelled at me, asking me why I'm so embarrassing her in another state rather than telling me this at home. She told me that I was being selfish by not telling her first and telling other relatives. When I argued back, she stared at me like I had just committed a crime. She left the room, leaving me cold and sad by what she did. I cried all night, realizing that my mother wasn't the hero that I thought she was. When we arrived home, I thought she was going to tell my siblings what happened, especially since they refused to speak to me the same. But she didn't. She told me that it's for the best that they don't know what happened, and they still don't know what happened. It's been so long since my mother and I have spoken normally now. Every time I try to speak to her, she accuses me of, quote, keeping secrets and whoring around. I cry every time she says this. One day, I had to go to an interview because she was looking for my ex-stepfather, and the interviewer asked me if I wanted my mother to stay or to leave. I chose for her to leave. I didn't want to say anything about him in front of her. After the interview, she yelled at me again, saying that I was just so focused on embarrassing her. I stared at her, furious, because why am I the one that's in the wrong? We went home in silence, and I refused to speak to my mother properly anymore. To make matters worse, my sister now emails me from Canada, joking about the time that I falsely accused my ex-stepfather of things that he didn't do. You know what the ironic thing is? She's a humanitarian worker. She's supposed to know the signs of abuse, and yet she doesn't believe that I was SA'd. Recently, my mom and I argued. She was upset that I didn't finish my chores for the day. I was in my bed, tired, and I had just finished babysitting my nephew, who was only 2 at the time. I tried telling her this, but she kept cutting me off. I was so upset that I yelled back. That's when she cussed me out, telling me how ungrateful I was for all that she gave me. And then she landed the final blow. I will never forget how she said this, and I'll type it verbatim. You are just a whore who keeps coming after older men. You couldn't even close your effing legs for your stepfather. I stared at her, crying my heart out at this point. I told her that I will never consider her my mother ever again, and then I left the room, locking my door and crying myself to sleep. Now I have my phone, and my phone is blowing up with messages from her saying that I shouldn't have spoken to her that way. I don't want to even speak to her, but now she's trying to bring my brother into this because he's messaging me saying that I was too harsh. I don't know anymore. Should I tell him why I said it, or should I just leave it alone and apologize? OP, your mom is probably one of the worst parents I could even dream of. That is just the worst possible thing you could do to a child and the worst possible reaction that you can have. Hands down, one of the worst human beings mothers I've ever read about in my entire life. Secondly, I agree with most of the comments. What you really should be doing is going to CPS, Child Protective Services, show them the video, tell them everything about how your mom refuses to take care of you and refuses to go to the police and help you. and maybe try to go stay with your aunt in New York if she'll let you. It doesn't sound like anyone at home is actually supportive of you and is going to be there for you. So you might as well try to get out and try to get to a safer place. In any case, I wish you the very best, OP. I hope you're able to get out of that situation. I would literally unalive someone if they did that to my daughter if I had a daughter. So this mother's reaction, I can't even fathom. That's just crazy to me. On a much lighter note, our next post comes from Diligent Pause 662, titled, Am I the butthole for not wanting to know or meet my grandchild? I have a son named Asker, who is married to my daughter in law. We'll call her Eva. None of us have a problem with her, but our relationship with her is mostly formal. She got pregnant and gave birth to our grandchild, and no, this is not our first grandchild. We have four other kids, and they have kids of their own, making us have 10 grandchildren. After our son's daughter was born, we were not allowed to meet her at the hospital, but of course, my son's in laws were allowed to meet her. Fine, she feels safer at the hospital with her parents being there. No problem, we can accept that. We then asked when we could visit, and they told us that they would tell us when it's okay. My daughter told me that my son had told her in laws that they were allowed to meet the baby, and all my kids thought that that was kind of weird that they were allowed to meet them, but we weren't, but we didn't say anything. No, at this point, it's been 5 months since she was born, so we tried to ask them again. They saw the message, but they didn't reply. At that point, I decided that I was not going to beg my son to let us meet his baby. So we left communications open, but we didn't ask again because we did not want to be overbearing. The rest of my kids did not ask either to go meet their new niece, so it wasn't just us. Before we knew it, the girl had turned 1 year old. During that time, our son would write to us, but never about his daughter, so we didn't push it. We then got a message from Eva telling us that we were horrible grandparents, that we did not show any interest in her child, and that they were now cutting us off. We were so confused. We tried replying, but she had already blocked us on everything, and so had our own son. Long story short, my son's in laws reached out to us to tell us that they actually cut off their own daughter. According to them, she was overbearing, threatening them with not being allowed to see their grandchild if they didn't do this or that. So they actually took it upon themselves to cut her off first so that she wouldn't have any power over them. I honestly don't think my son and Iba knew about them contacting us because my son reached out to my wife and asked her if we wanted to meet his daughter. My wife thanked him for the kind offer but told him no in a very gentle way without asking me. And for reference, I'm not angry about that. And then my wife got blasted with messages from Iba saying that we, quote, owed them gifts, owed them money, and owed her daughter as grandparents and other things like that. At this point, I was fed up and I told her that we did not mind not knowing her daughter and that we had 10 other grandchildren. Our son then started begging us to meet his daughter and said that we were favoring our other grandchildren. So I told him that we are not obligated to be grandparents and that if he wants to cut us off, it's fine, and suggested that we could actually do that for him if he wanted. Definitely not the butthole OP. You are right. You have no obligation to be a grandparent to that child if the parents don't really want you to. They don't really want you to be grandchildren to that child. They're only talking to you because they were cut off by her biological parents. They only want to use you for your money. They didn't want you to know the daughter when her family was still in the picture, but now that they're gone, now they need you so they could take advantage of you for their gain. They don't want you guys, OP, so it's perfectly reasonable to do it for them and cut them off so they also don't have power over you. Our next Reddit post comes from John Doe Anon 1987, titled Father Dying and I Left Her Stranded. So, long story short, my wife, a 33-year-old female, left me, a 46-year-old male, and our two young children early August last year. We were together for 13 years and married for 10 of those years. We had lived in several different countries, both in Asia and Europe. The last country we were in was the Czech Republic. Because we had a group of friends, my wife decided to separate from us and travel to the Czech Republic. I helped her financially as much as I could, hoping that one day she might return. I blamed the separation much on myself, and I even begged her for almost 6 months to return. By mid December, I found pictures uploaded to the cloud suggesting that she was in a new relationship. When confronting her, she admitted that she had slept with him less than 4 months after she had left us. She regretted it, mostly especially since she had promised her daughter not to get involved with guys, but to solely focus on work. She had broken up with him, and she told me that he was quite strict with her, limiting her time to go out and even put restrictions on her of what she can and cannot wear. Something that she's never experienced with me because I gave her all the freedom in the world because I trusted her very much. I had a brief moment of trying to reconcile. I spent days on Reddit reading about infidelity and reconciliation. By any measure, she did not show any remorse and was not interested at all in coming back. I concluded early January that this was the end of us. No one regretted getting back together, whereas some or most regretted reconciliation even many years after. Here's where the problem comes in. Soon after she left in August 2024, she got informed about her father's cancer and that he had between 6 months and 2 years to live. While I was trying to get her back, I offered her early November to return to her home country in Asia to settle any bad blood between them. She told me that she honestly hated him. He was abusive and cheated many times on her mother, and she did not want to go. By mid December, while still trying to reconcile, she mentioned the worsening state of her father. This time, I offered to travel altogether, actually, and spend time with her family. Again, she refused this. Now, this Monday, February 10th, she sends me a message that she immediately wanted to travel all of us together because her father was in the hospital and now dying. By now, I no longer wanted her back and completely refused. She was quite nasty with us, actually. 2 days ago, her father finally passed, and she is feeling terrible because she wasn't there with him and won't be able to travel for the funeral due to money issues. For reference, even with my financial help early on, she has still been spending far more than she earned these last 6 months. I've asked some friends about this, and even ChatGPT, which I've been feeding info from the very beginning, but they're all saying that I have no obligation whatsoever and that she 100% abandoned us, the family, cheated on us, and refused my previous offers to go, so I don't owe her anything. What's your opinion, Reddit? OP, I'm almost not even sure why you posted this. Yes, I get, feeling bad that, your ex-lover wasn't there to be with her father. And yeah, I think most good people would naturally feel kind of bad about that. But it seems like you kind of already know the answer to your question. She left you. She abandoned your family. She cheated on you. And she refused your offers twice to send her there. As far as I'm concerned, OP, that's kind of her fault that she wasn't there for her father. Plus, she said that she hated him anyway. What suddenly changed that made her want to go? You did nothing wrong, OP. You're definitely not the butthole. In fact, you did way more than what you should have, in my opinion. Our next Reddit post comes from Throwaway2776151, titled, "Am I the butthole for kicking my sister out after she laughed at me and my disabled wife?" Me and my wife are both 23. We were dating since we were 15 years old, and 4 years ago we got married, and our families were against us getting married so early because we were too young to commit to each other, but we got married anyway, and they did attend, but we could all see their discomfort. Now, her family and mine, and we both all get along pretty well, and I felt like we were all getting along because, well, we're both happy, and so were our families. Unfortunately, 7 months ago, my wife had an accident. She broke both of her legs, and now she has scars on her face, which make her very depressed. And I tried my best to help her, to comfort her, and the doctors are trying the best that they can. And I'm just trying to provide as much physical and emotional support as I can. But the unfortunate truth is, she's paralyzed from the waist down for life. She's not going back to the way she was. She knows this and I know this, but I'm just trying to help my wife the best that I can. However, 3 days ago, when my sister came to visit us, she got really drunk and started making fun of our situation. She started blabbering and said that it's karma for hurting everyone in our family. Thankfully, my wife wasn't around because she was sleeping. I asked her to get in her car and I dropped her off at her place the next day. She said that she's sorry and that she didn't mean to hurt me, but I told her that what she said did hurt me and that I would forgive her if she had hit me, but you're making fun of us and what we're going through, and I just can't accept that, and I'm never going to talk to her ever again. However, my parents are saying that my sister was just drunk and that I should forgive her and forget about it because she was drunk. But I feel like she was extremely disrespectful to our struggle and making fun of us. OP, a wise man once told me, 3 people in this world will tell you the truth no matter what. Kids, people that are angry and say things out of anger, and people that are drunk. OP, she didn't say this just because she was drunk. She really feels this in her heart that, you said it yourself. When you guys got married, they didn't want you to get married and that you could see the discomfort in both families. She still clearly has a problem with you guys being married, and she told you that when she was drunk. If I were you, OP, and someone made fun of my wife in that way from my family, I would do the same thing. I wouldn't talk to them ever again because, that's your wife and she just went through this horribly traumatic event and you're trying to support her. And how dare anyone make fun of your wife for that? So yeah, OP, definitely not the butthole. I'm actually proud of you for sticking up for your wife. I've read so many stories on here of people that are just very sheepishly do not stick up for their spouses. So it's good to see that you're sticking up for her. That was Reddit After Hours, bringing you r/Am I the Butthole. Thank you all so much for listening, and if you like these stories, like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below for any future Reddit subs that you'd like us to cover in the future, as we post new Reddit videos almost every single day.